So finally I was like, okay, he's not changing. He's not doing anything different. He's not getting better. Well, like, screw it. I might as well just try to work on myself then. Soon after we moved to China, we hit a little bit of a rough patch in our marriage, I guess you could say. And I try to blame it on all the things like, oh my gosh, we're spending literally every waking minute together, and that would be enough to drive anyone insane. And like, I was like, our work's really stressful, we're just transitioning, all these things. But the fact of the matter is, like, I was just being a raging bitch. And it's true, I was being terrible. But the fact of the matter was that I was just being a horrible wife. So I was like, okay, enough is enough. Something has got to change in our marriage because, like, we're just gonna kill each other. So I was like, trying to be like really mature about this, and I, was like, okay, yeah, we can do this. But like nothing ever changed. Like we'd have these arguments and then, we'd get to this place of resolution, but really resolution was like I would do a recap of the argument and like basically tell him all the things that he needed to change and fix, which is terrible. So like clearly nothing ever changed. Like it was just this terrible, vicious cycle. So finally I was like, okay, he's not changing. He's not doing anything different. He's not getting better. Well, like, screw it. I might as well just try to work on myself then. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pick like 5 tiny things to start doing differently and see if this even makes a difference at all. So you can tell like this is kind of a frustrating time for me in life. And so I picked 5 things. And the 5 things that I picked that I was gonna incorporate into our marriage and just like our daily living was I was not gonna nag him like whatsoever, no nagging. I was gonna say something encouraging, like words of affirmation, because I guess men really love that kind of stuff. And I was like, what? Okay, whatever. So I was like, okay, I'll say something encouraging. So no nagging, 1 encouraging thing a day. I would initiate connection with him in some way, whether that was like through conversation, through sex, whatever. Like I would be intentional about connecting with him. The 4th one was speaking kindly at all cost, regardless of what ever happened. And so speaking kindly was number 4.
Still working on that one?
Yes, I'm still working on it. Speaking kindly. And then the 5th one was stopping negative thought processes. Because, they kind of like, you get going down this like dark rabbit hole and it's just bad. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this 5 simple things. Then I'm gonna do this for 30 days and just see what's gonna hurt. I'm kind of a nerd, and so I like graphed and I plotted all this stuff and like kept all these metrics and measurements because I needed to know if this is actually effective or not, because I wasn't going to be wasting my time on something that was ineffective.
Wait, what did you measure?
Like the results were my behaviors and like what I was doing, did that like bring positive change? Like if I nagged my husband less, or do we like not have as much conflict? Or like if I spoke more kindly to my husband, was he kinder to me? Like all these crazy things. And at the end of it, the results were in, and they all directly affected our marriage in terms of like we had less conflict, we had better communication, we were more connected, like everything was better. But the one thing that surprised me so much was like the single thing that impacted like every area of our marriage the most was me stopping my negative thought processes about my husband. And the fact of the matter was, I know that sounds really bad. Some of you are probably like, oh, you're a horrible wife. You think bad things about your husband. Yes, I do sometimes. I do think bad things about him because he really pisses me off some days. But what I was so surprised about was these negative thought processes that like can really infect our brains and just like destroy everything around us. They were over the dumbest things. Like the things that would set off these negative thought processes about my husband were like, oh, he left his dirty clothes on the floor, or he left his coffee mug on the dresser instead of putting it in the sink. And it was just like those teeny tiny little things that just set me off on this like terrible pathway of like, oh, my husband left his clothes on the floor. He must not care. He's so lazy. He must not care that I have to do all this work. I mean, goodness gracious, what better does he have to do? All he does is work, and I work too, and like he thinks that it's so hard to put his clothes away. Like, do you see? It's just totally ridiculous. Because when I thought negatively of my husband, that came out in everything. I couldn't speak kindly to him. I didn't say anything encouraging to him. I didn't want to initiate connection with him. It infected everything else. It was my mindset and my thought process. The more negatively I thought about him, the more I nagged him, which I don't know, like, do your husbands appreciate being nagged? Because mine sure as heck doesn't. All these things that if he never played a role in them and it was just me, how much they influenced our marriage. Change in our marriage really started with me, and it wasn't like, oh, we should go see a marriage therapist together, or like, oh, honey, you have some work to do. It was like, no, I have my own work to do, and that's going to impact our marriage in ways that I didn't even know were possible. There was a really profound change that happened in our marriage when I stopped worrying about what he was or wasn't doing, and when I stopped trying to control him and what he did or didn't do, or what he did or didn't contribute to our marriage. And what really, when I took a step back and examined myself, that's where the real work began, and that's where the real change began, was when I changed. Woohoo! Marriage!